Yeah, you don't want to stomp on the clutch or it'll make that same noise. We're back. This is Northwest Convoy. I'm Tim and I'll be teaching you how to drive manual. What does the transmission do? In our little diagram here, we have our motor, a transmission, and our wheels. The whole idea of the transmission is to give us the proper driving range based on the motor RPM to the wheel RPM. Here we have a little line chart of miles an hour and then its associated RPM. This is a wheel of diameter 22 inches, just for reference. If that wheel was traveling 100 miles an hour, which you would see on your speedometer, that would be equivalent to 1500 RPM. So without the transmission, if the wheel is traveling at 1500 RPM, that means our engine is traveling at 1500 RPM, which is doable. Our motors are more than capable of running good at 1500 RPM. Now, if we were to jump down to 50 miles an hour, that would be equivalent to 750 RPM. That is just at idle. Your motor would barely be running it just enough to power its own weight. Now, if we were down to 20 miles an hour, that would be equivalent to 300 RPM, and our motor would stall. That's below our idle. It would stall. So what do? We need to take this 1-to-1 ratio and add something that has like the secret sauce that manipulates the gear ratios to give us a lower RPM one area and then a higher RPM on the other. So, for example, on our graph, we have first gear noted in green from 0 to 6K RPM would travel at around 35 miles an hour. These numbers are based off of my 2007 Mazdaspeed 6, which we will be jumping in here soon. The blue line, you can see you can still start at 0 and travel up to 6K RPM to 60 miles an hour. It'll be a little rough, but it's doable. Third gear, I didn't even finish the line because you will not start from 0 in third gear. You cannot start the car at that low. That is too low of a RPM. The motor will stall out. And that is the purpose of the transmission. You can't have first gear go 100 miles an hour. It just physically can't. Second gear is closer. That's you guys can see based on the graph. So after third gear, you'd have then fourth gear, fifth gear, sixth gear, and that would kind of do its thing, manipulate the RPM for either optimal fuel economy, optimal speed, optimal acceleration, up to your pick. So the transmission will take the RPM of the motor and make it suitable per wheel miles an hour. So here we are in the 2007 Mazdaspeed 6. The first thing when driving clutch is adjust your seat so you can push the clutch in all the way. If you cannot push the clutch in all the way, that may cause slipping of the clutch or grinding gears, and we don't want that. So once you have your seat adjusted, then push in the clutch and turn over the car and it will start. If you don't push in the clutch, the car won't start. That's just how they work. Next thing you want to do, familiarize yourself with the shifter. Generally, they're going to be the same. You're going to, in most general cases, either 5-speed or 6-speed. In this case, we have a 6-speed. So, mess with the shifter, even maybe before you start the car. Mess with it. Make sure you can go into first, second, third, fourth. Understand how the shifter works. One thing I will say is to know is the shifter will always, in neutral, it will bounce to the middle, which is between 3 and 4. So if I push in the clutch, just so I don't grind the gears, push straight forward, I'm in third, straight back, I'm in fourth. Put it into first, I'll go left, and then forwards, to put into second, left, and then down. And you can kind of follow the pattern. The big thing I want you guys to take out of this is if it's in neutral, it will jump to the middle between 3 and 4. Once you have familiarized yourself with the shifter and you can reach the clutch, now your next step is push in the clutch, put it into gear, and I want you to slip the clutch until you feel it grab, until you feel the clutches grabbing just enough to where the engine starts bogging down a little bit and propelling you forward. So this part is a little tough to illustrate in the car as the clutches only seems one-dimensional in that case. So side view of your clutch, it disengages, engages, and has dead space. What do I mean by that? This black line represents when the clutch is fully out, your foot isn't on the clutch, that's how it rests normally. When you start pushing on it, it starts disengaging until it's fully engaged and you have pressed down the clutch all the way. For what we're interested in is when you push it down all the way and you start releasing the clutch, then at the blue mark, it will start engaging. So you have this little green region right here of just pure dead space where you can do this with the clutch and it will not engage up until you touch the blue. Then between the blue and the red is when the clutch is grabbing. Over here, kind of a rough, to kind of get the point across, we see the green. It's fully disengaged. Blue is right around where it's slipping. Is when you're slipping the clutch to make that smooth transition. It's slipping the clutch. Red is it's packed and it ain't going nowhere. That's fully engaged, as kind of shown here. Between red and black is also dead space. Just kind of a side view of the clutch levels. Do that a couple times. You want to release it slowly so then you don't do one of these and stall out the car. If you do, no big deal. It just happens. This is a learning curve, so nothing crazy. Put in a first gear and giving no gas. My foot is off the gas. Slip the clutch, and once it grabs, let go. Do that a couple times. I want you guys to understand that dead space, as you guys saw in the whiteboard example. Once you guys have done that a couple times, I want you to release the clutch until it grabs and release slower, letting the motor adjust for itself. As it drops in RPM, it will adjust for itself until, my e-brake was on, that's unfortunate, until you start propelling forward. Now we're driving forward. I'm not on the gas. I'm not on nothing. It's just the turning, overturning of the engine is enough to get the car rolling. I might just turn around right here. Man, you guys also get a free POV. Pretty sick. So do that a couple times. We will get into the gas in a minute. I want you to slip the clutch. I'm a little bit on an uphill, so this will be fun. To slip the clutch and let the car drive itself initially. When you feel it or when you see it, because you should have a tachometer for your RPMs, when you see it go below 500 RPM, push the clutch back in. Push in the clutch. Otherwise, it will stall out. Let it slip. Let it slip and let it readjust, just to kind of get you moving for now. Once you have done that a couple times, I want you to try to do the same thing now, but now drop into second gear. So slip in the clutch until it starts going. Now it's going. Now push in the clutch again and quickly switch to second, or you'll lose your momentum where it grabs again, and keep on going. Now, more than likely, this will not happen. More than likely, it will look like this. Let me stop again real quick. You're gonna slip the clutch and go. And when you drop it in a second, it may jump around a little bit. It happens. That's just part of driving stick. Okay. Next thing I want you guys to do is I want you to hold the RPM at 1000 RPM. Now, the only reason why I feel like I need to describe this is a tutorial for the beginner person, even if you don't know much about cars, so then you can kind of have an idea. When I'm talking about to hold the RPM at 1K, 2K, 3K, I'm referring to a typical car. You do not want to do that, let's say, to a diesel. That would be red line, and your motor does not necessarily want to sit there for 30 seconds. So when I'm talking about holding the RPM at 1,000 RPM for 30 seconds, 2,000 RPM for 30 seconds, 3,000 RPM for 30 seconds, that's what I'm referring to. Take note of your RPM gauge. If you're driving a manual, you should have an RPM gauge. So you see the red line here is 6K. You don't want to, for this exercise, you don't want to pass about halfway. Just, I mean, you could go up to 4. If you're really ballsy, do 5. But me personally, I wouldn't. From 1 to 3, just for the exercise. If you, let's say, had a diesel and you're doing this, hold it up 1K, it's going to idle at 750. Hold it at 1K, maybe 1,500 and 2K. If I was doing the same exercise in a diesel, that's where I would hold those RPM. Back to the car, I guess. Press the gas so it's holding at 1,000 RPM for about maybe 30 seconds or so. The whole point of this exercise is to get your foot used to being in control of the gas, in control of the RPM specifically. I held at around 1,200. Let's try 2,000. And you want to perform this from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 RPM. There we go. So we held the RPM. Now is combining the two. The key here is, can you see my hands? Mm-hmm. The key here is when let's say this is the gas and this is the clutch. The key here is as you're releasing, here, let's go this way. As you're releasing the clutch, you're at the same proportion on the gas. So when you're about halfway from releasing the clutch, you're about halfway to as much gas as you want. So you're releasing the gas, pressing on the gas, releasing on the clutch. That's the whole idea. We have clutch pushed in, we're in first gear. We're gonna give it a little bit of gas. And we're gonna slip the clutch until it grabs, and then we're gonna give it more gas, and we're off. We're gonna try that one more time. We're gonna do the same thing. Watch my footwork. We're gonna release the clutch until it grabs, and then give it some gas. Oh, that was too close. That's generally how I'll start for my personal driving. I'll let go until it grabs, and then I'll give it some gas. We're gonna try this one more time. Watch my footwork. I'm gonna give it some gas, just so there's some initial throttle response. And we're gonna slip the clutch, and as soon as it starts grabbing, more gas. This method particularly would slip the clutch too much, and I would always smell clutch until I started teaching this method. Very rarely do I ever smell the clutch, even for beginner drivers, where you would rev it up really high initially, drop the clutch, you would either bog or you over rev, you don't get the proportions right, then you end up either stalling out, slipping the clutch too much, you smell that burning smell. It's all unfortunate either way. So if you can do that, if you can start, that is about 60 or 70% of driving manual. If you can just go, that is the battle here. To switch gears is simple, because then you have the same ratios. It's very, very simple to shift gears, as I will now demonstrate. We're gonna go from first to second. Same proportions. Oh, I need to buckle up. Same proportions. It's all about getting a feel between the clutch and the gas. Big thing I want to mention, practice makes perfect. Between the clutch and the gas, that proportion, that ratio you need based on whatever driving condition you want to do, that is where the money's at. That is where they'll have to take time in driving and practicing, finding an empty parking lot and trying to understand where the clutch grabs, understand how much gas you need. That is where you will master driving manual. Now for a quick POV home. Woo, dude, Spidey senses who? I doubt we're actually gonna use this footage, but it's fine. duh, 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 duh.